The trail went cold. Before we begin, if you're new here, you're walking into the heart of darkness. This story isn't for the faint of heart. Consider subscribing and ringing that
This
bell.
is perfect.
Because
Just
the
like
truth
you.
we uncover in the
I love
shadows
this.
is more
Me too.
terrifying than
We
any
need to
fiction.
talk about this.
The air in
There's
Devil's
nothing to
Bend State
discuss.
Park is thick.
It's important.
Not
Fine.
just for the
Make
humid
it quick.
Arkansas summer, but with a silence that feels wrong. It's the morning of July 16th, 2018. The usual symphony of cicadas and rustling leaves is shattered by the frantic bark of a dog, a leash trailing behind it, covered in burrs and a dark, sticky substance. The dog leads a pair of early morning hikers not to a scenic overlook, but to a scene of pure horror. Nestled in a ravine, off a lesser-used trail known locally as the Dead Man's Walk, lay the bodies of a young couple. They've been dragged into the dense underbrush, partially concealed by fallen branches. The man, later identified as 28-year-old Mark Evans, is face down, multiple gunshot wounds to his back. A few feet away, his fiancée, 26-year-old Chloe Sable, is curled in a fetal position, a single, execution-style gunshot wound to the back of her head. Their backpacks are spilled open, granola bars and water bottles scattered alongside a now-shattered camera. There are no wallets, no phones. The initial, grim assumption is a brutal robbery gone violently, tragically wrong. The park, a sprawling 2,500-acre labyrinth of sandstone bluffs and deep, wooded hollows in the Ozarks, becomes the epicenter of a massive investigation. Crime scene techs move with a grim focus. The lack of shell casings is the first red flag. The killer was meticulous, picking them up. The only immediate evidence is a set of deep, chaotic drag marks leading from the main trail and a single, partial boot print in a patch of mud near the bodies, a size 11 common tread. Detective Sarah Vance, a 20-year veteran with the state police, feels the weight immediately. The violence is personal, excessive. This wasn't a panicked mugging, she tells her partner, Detective Luis Garcia, as they survey the scene. You shoot someone in the back during a struggle, you run. You don't then drag them off the trail, arrange them, and deliver a coup de grace. This was a mission. The narrative of a random park robbery begins to unravel under scrutiny. Interviews reveal Mark and Chloe were not naive tourists. They were local school teachers, avid hikers who knew these trails intimately. They had told friends they were going to photograph a specific, hard-to-find rock formation that morning. They were meeting someone, a close friend confesses to police. Chloe said they were finally going to settle that old deal. She was nervous, but said it would be worth it. The digital forensics team makes a breakthrough. While the phones are gone, a cloud backup syncs just minutes before the estimated time of the murders. The last photo isn't of a rock formation. It's a selfie of Mark and Chloe, smiling but tense, with a third figure blurred in the background, just a shoulder and part of a dark green jacket. The last file is a voice memo, activated in Chloe's pocket. It's mostly the sound of walking, then the distinct click of a gun's safety being disengaged. A voice, digitally distorted but clearly male, says, "You shouldn't have brought her, Mark. Now it's a party." Then, footsteps rushing in the first gunshot. The case explodes. This was a targeted ambush. The old deal becomes the focal point. Detectives dig into Mark's past. He was quiet, well-liked, but a deeper dive into his finances shows a startling anomaly, a deposit of $45,000 into a now-closed savings account 2 years prior. The source? Untraceable, routed through offshore layers. When confronted, Mark's brother, Eric, turns pale. He never told you, did he? About the lawsuit? The settlement was supposed to be confidential. He reveals that Mark had witnessed a serious accident at a private hunting lodge owned by a wealthy local family, the Hendersons. Mark's testimony would have been devastating in a wrongful death suit. The case was settled out of court for a significant sum, with a strict non-disclosure agreement. The Hendersons were furious, felt extorted. The family patriarch, Garrett Henderson, a man with a reputation for ruthless business tactics and a love for collecting vintage firearms, had made vague threats. He said Mark's conscience would come with a receipt. Eric stammers. Detective Vance obtains a warrant for the Henderson property. Garrett is calmly antagonistic, offering a full tour of his gun cabinet. None matched the ballistic report. His alibi is rock solid. Business meetings in Little Rock, confirmed by a dozen people. His son, Troy, a sullen 24-year-old with a history of reckless behavior, is less composed. His eyes dart when shown the photo of the green jacket. He owns one, he admits, but claims it was stolen from his truck a week ago. A search of his truck, however, yields a receipt from a gas station near Devil's Den, time-stamped the morning of the murders. As Vance prepares to bring Troy in for intense questioning, a call comes in from the evidence locker. The single most critical piece of evidence, the boot print cast, is missing from the secured room. The chain of custody log shows the last person to check it out was a deputy, a well-respected officer named Carl Riggs. When they call his station, they get a chilling response. Carl Riggs hasn't reported for duty today. His wife says he left in the middle of the night, saying he had to fix a mistake. His personal cell phone is going straight to voicemail. His patrol car is found abandoned at a remote boat launch on the Lee Creek Reservoir, the driver's door wide open, his service weapon still in a lockbox. The investigation is no longer just about a double murder in the woods. A police officer is now missing, and the only physical evidence linking the killer to the scene has vanished. Detective Vance stares at the frantic note left on Riggs' kitchen table, a single line scrawled in haste. It wasn't about the money. He showed me the pictures. What pictures? Who showed him? And as the sun sets over the Ozarks, one terrifying question hangs over the entire case. Was Deputy Carl Riggs a crooked cop covering his tracks, or was he the next victim on a killer's list? The Devil's Den has swallowed another soul, and the hunt is just beginning. A cop in the crosshairs. The discovery of Deputy Carl Riggs' abandoned patrol car sent a seismic shock through the investigation. A missing cop wasn't just a new variable. It was a crisis that suggested corruption, coercion, or a killer with far more reach than anyone had imagined. The Serene boat launch on Lee Creek became a second baffling crime scene. There were no signs of a struggle. The car was meticulously parked. It looked less like an abduction, and more like a man who had voluntarily stepped out and walked toward the water's edge, disappearing into the thick morning fog. Detective Vance stood at the water's ragged border, the note from Riggs' kitchen burning in her mind. It wasn't about the money. He showed me the pictures. What pictures? The crime scene photos? Something else? The implication was clear. Riggs had seen something that had shattered his professional detachment, prompting a desperate, solitary mission. The focus split into two frantic paths. One team dug into Riggs' life, while Vance and Garcia turned the heat up on Troy Henderson. Brought into the Stark interrogation room, Troy's bravado had crumbled into a twitchy, sullen fear. He admitted the gas station receipt was his, but claimed he was meeting a girl, not Mark and Chloe. His story was thin, full of contradictions. But when confronted with the detail of the voice memo, the distorted voice saying, "You shouldn't have brought her, Mark," Troy's face genuinely contorted in confusion. "That doesn't make sense," he muttered, almost to himself. Why would he say that? He knew she'd be there. Vance caught the pronoun. He? Who is he, Troy? Who knew she'd be there? Troy clammed up, demanding a lawyer. But the slip was a crack in the dam. It suggested a plan, a known target. Mark was the primary focus. Chloe was collateral, an unexpected complication only if the killer hadn't known she was coming. But Troy's reaction implied the opposite. Meanwhile, the audit of Deputy Riggs' recent activities revealed a disturbing pattern. In the weeks leading up to the murders, he had accessed a cold case file of a decades-old accident, the very hunting lodge incident that had resulted in Mark Evans' confidential settlement. Riggs had no official reason to be in that file. Digging deeper, they found a personal connection. Riggs' cousin had been the one to initially respond to the hunting lodge accident. He had filed the original report, which described it as a tragic, clear-cut accident. That cousin had died in a single-car crash 6 months later. A forensic accountant, working parallel to police, delivered the next bombshell. The $45,000 settlement deposited into Mark's account was just the tip of the iceberg. The Henderson family had paid out over $500,000 in total, but not as one settlement. The money had been dispersed in smaller, untraceable increments to 3 other individuals over the past 5 years. One of those names was a pseudonym, but the bank's signature card when finally subpoenaed, bore a familiar signature: Carl Riggs. Riggs hadn't just known about the old case. He had been paid off. He was on the Henderson payroll. The revelation turned the department inside out. Was Riggs the inside man for the murders? Did he remove the boot print evidence to protect Troy, or his own complicity? His disappearance suggested panic, but the note suggested a conscience. Vance decided to re-interview the one person who might have seen the whole chessboard: Eric Evans, Mark's grieving brother. Under the gentle but persistent pressure, Eric broke. He confessed that Mark had been deeply troubled in the final months. The money ate at him. He said it was blood money, that what he saw that day at the lodge was an accident. He said it was deliberate, an argument that got out of hand, a push and a fall. But the Hendersons covered it up, paid everyone off. And the pictures? Vance pressed, leaning forward. Eric looked haunted. Mark was paranoid. He thought they'd come for him, eventually to silence him for good. So he made an insurance policy. He had copies of everything. The original accident scene photos his lawyer took, the financial records, names. He kept it all on a hidden drive. He told me if anything happened to him, to take it straight to the state attorney general. But he never told me where it was. A hidden drive. The pictures Riggs mentioned. The pieces were aligning, but into a more dangerous picture. Mark Evans wasn't just a witness. He was a whistleblower sitting on proof of a covered-up killing. The murder in Devil's Den wasn't a random act or a simple robbery. It was a preemptive strike to destroy the evidence and its keeper. The break came from a park ranger, re-interviewed about any unusual activity. He recalled seeing a black, late-model SUV with tinted windows parked at a remote maintenance gate the day before the murders. He thought it was odd, as the gate was locked. He'd taken a picture of the license plate, just in case. The plate came back registered to a shell corporation, but the corporate paperwork listed a single name as the authorized agent: Garrett Henderson. Vance and Garcia descended on the Henderson compound with a new warrant, this time for the SUV and for Garrett's personal electronic devices. Garrett was no longer the cool, collected patriarch. He was furious, spitting threats about lawsuits and ruined reputations. As Tex hauled away computers, Vance confronted him in his oak-paneled study. "Your alibi is perfect, Garrett. Too perfect. You were in Little Rock, making sure a dozen people saw you. But who did you send? Who does your dirty work?" Garrett said nothing, his eyes glacial. But from a hallway, his wife, Eleanor, stood silently weeping. As Vance passed her, the woman's hand shot out, clutching Vance's arm with surprising strength. She slipped a small, folded piece of paper into Vance's palm, her eyes wide with terror. Back in her car, Vance unfolded the note. It was an address, scribbled in a shaky hand, in 3 words: the caretaker's cabin. Surveillance was set up on a dilapidated cabin deep in the Henderson property, a place not listed on any county map. The heat signature showed one person inside. Was this where Riggs had come? Was he being held? Or was this the killer's nest? Vance authorized a tactical entry at dawn. As the team moved under cover of darkness, Garcia's phone buzzed with a report from the digital forensics team. They'd cracked Garrett Henderson's encrypted email. Sent the day after the murders to an anonymous encrypted account was a simple, chilling message: "The primary package is destroyed. The secondary copy may be in play. The deputy has become a liability. Clean the board." Breaching the cabin door at first light, the tactical team found it empty of people, but not of secrets. It was a makeshift operations room. Maps of Devil's Den were pinned to the wall, with the murder site circled. Photographs of Mark and Chloe, taken days before their deaths, showed them hiking, shopping, living their lives unaware they were being stalked. And on a small desk, next to the computer, sat a single, dust-covered external hard drive, but there was no sign of Riggs. Instead, on the floor near the back window, which was slightly ajar, they found his deputy's badge, polished and gleaming, placed deliberately in the center of a crude, hand-drawn circle in the dust. It wasn't a struggle. It was a message, a signature. As Vance stared at the badge, her radio crackled. A body had been found. The signature in the dust.
Just start from the beginning.
Recovery of Deputy Carl Riggs' body
Help us
from the murky
understand.
depths of Lee Creek confirmed the darkest suspicions. This was a systematic purge. He hadn't drowned. He'd been strangled. The chains added post-mortem to sink a message. His death was a professional, cold-blooded silencing. The stage scene at the caretaker's cabin, the maps, the photos, the badge placed like a ritual offering, now felt like a taunt, a performance. And the hard drive left on the desk was the central prop. Detective Vance ordered the cabin sealed, and the drive handled by the bomb squad. Her instinct was right. While not explosive, it was digitally booby-trapped. A forensic technician, working in an isolated lab, found it contained a sophisticated worm designed to corrupt and wipe any police network it connected to. It also held one accessible file, a single, haunting audio recording. It was a clear, undigitized version of the voice from the woods. "You shouldn't have brought her, Mark. Now it's a party." The voice was unmistakable to anyone who knew him. Garrett Henderson's younger brother, Silas. Silas Henderson was the family's ghost. A decorated former Army Ranger who had served multiple covert tours. He'd returned home a different man, withdrawn, volatile, and utterly loyal to the family empire. He was their fixer, a man who operated in the shadows where Garrett's boardroom influence couldn't reach. He was also the registered owner of several calibers of ammunition that matched the ballistics from the murders. The caretaker's cabin had been his private quarters. A nationwide bolo was issued for Silas Henderson. He had vanished, but Vance believed he wasn't finished. The email cleaned the board, replayed in her mind. If Mark Evans was a primary package and Riggs was a liability, the secondary copy of the evidence was still out there, and Eric Evans, Mark's brother, was now the only living person who might know where it was. Vance placed Eric in a safe house, but the feeling of dread wouldn't lift. The investigation into the Hunting Lodge death was reopened with furious intensity. With Riggs' testimony gone, they relied on exhumed records and the memory of the original first responder, Riggs' late cousin. His widow, cleaning out her attic, found a box of his old things. Buried under uniforms was a sealed envelope marked "For my conscience." Inside were photographs, not digital copies, but glossy 4x6 prints. They showed the Hunting Lodge accident scene, but from angles never entered into evidence. They clearly showed Garrett Henderson standing over the victim, his hands on the man's shoulders, his face contorted in rage, not aid. The official report called a fall. These pictures told a story of a violent confrontation. This was the evidence Mark Evans had possessed. This was what had been worth killing for. Garrett hadn't just covered up an accident. He had covered up a manslaughter, possibly a murder. The settlement payoffs were hush money, and Mark, sitting on this proof, had become a permanent threat. The manhunt for Silas intensified, but he was a phantom. Then, a break came from an unexpected source. Troy Henderson, facing a murder charge as an accomplice, cracked in his cell. Through sobs, he confessed his role. He was a distraction. His job was to meet Mark and Chloe at the trailhead, to act as a friendly intermediary for a final payout discussion, and to lead them down the specific, isolated trail. He claimed he didn't know Silas was there. He heard the shots, ran, and never looked back. Uncle Silas, he doesn't leave loose ends. He's not done, Troy whispered. Vance knew he was right. The safe house where Eric was hidden was compromised within 24 hours. A perimeter sensor was tripped, and a figure was seen moving through the woods. It was a feint. While police resources surged the safe house, the real target was elsewhere. Eric, under protective custody, had finally remembered something. A month before his death, a paranoid Mark had given him a key to a storage unit, joking it was for his zombie apocalypse gear. Eric had dismissed it. Now he handed the key to Vance. Unit 114 at Fort Secure Storage. Vance and Garcia went alone, without broadcasting their move. The unit was in a quiet, industrial part of town. As Garcia worked the lock, the silence felt oppressive. The door rolled up with a metallic shriek. Inside, there were no boxes of files, no hard drives, just a single item sitting in the center of the empty concrete floor, a vintage, military-issue footlocker. And seated calmly on top of it, as if waiting for them, was Silas Henderson. He wore tactical gear, his expression one of eerie serenity. He held no weapon. "I wonder which one of you would be smarter," Silas said, his voice flat. The evidence isn't in here. It's already where it needs to be. Sent to every major news outlet in the state an hour ago. Garrett's finished. The Empire falls at dawn. Vance drew her weapon, ordering him to the ground. Silas complied slowly, lying face down. Then why are you here? Vance demanded. Garcia moving in to cuff him. Closure, Silas said, his face against the cold concrete. He made me a killer when I was 8 years old. Did you know that? Not the Army. Him. The first man I ever killed was a drifter Garrett caught stealing. He handed me the gun and said, "Protect what's ours." The hunting lodge? That was me, too. Garrett argued, I handled it. Mark Evans saw me. I've been cleaning my brother's messes my whole life. This was the last one. As he was read his rights, Silas looked up at Vance, his eyes hollow. Riggs was weak. He took the money but couldn't live with the pictures. He came to me, thought he could appeal to my humanity. A faint, tragic smile touched his lips. I showed him where I put the first one. The drifter, that's what broke him. The locker was opened. It did not contain documents. It contained a carefully arranged collection of personal effects, wallets, watches, a child's locket. 7 in total. 7 trophies, spanning decades. Silas Henderson hadn't just killed Mark and Chloe. He was a serial killer. His crimes perfectly hidden behind his brother's wealth and power. His victims disguised as accidents or disappearances. The Devil's Den murders were merely his most recent and most public masterpiece. Garrett Henderson was arrested for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and manslaughter. Silas confessed 8 counts of murder in chilling, emotionless detail. The case was closed. The board finally cleaned. But in the aftermath, Detective Sarah Vance would sit in her office, staring at the evidence board now stripped bare. She would think of the badge left in the circle of dust, a signature of a man who believed his work was a dark art. She would remember Silas's calm surrender, his relief, and she would feel a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. The truth was out. The killers were caught. But the shadow they cast over those Ozark Hills felt permanent, a reminder that the most terrifying crimes aren't committed in moments of chaos, but in cold, calculated silence over a lifetime. If you thought this descent into darkness was the end of the story, you haven't been paying attention. The real horror is in the details we almost miss. Hit subscribe, because the next case we uncover will make you question the shadows in your own hometown.